So we're going to get started now. We've just got a couple more folks that have booked in, but you were so wonderfully prompt. We won't hold you up. We'll get started. And thank you so much for coming in today. We're really excited about this I'm actually really excited about this program because I get to hear from these amazing experts today. I get to sit back and relax. So welcome to the ACMI Museum of Screen Culture. So I'm Susan. I'm from the education team at ACMI, and I'm really delighted to introduce this session on VCE art making and exhibiting, and this focus on our new, magnificent new exhibition, Beings by Universal Everything, just opened last week. So as we begin, ACMI would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways of Greater Melbourne, the people of the Kulin Nation, and recognise that ACMI is located on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. We also acknowledge First Nations people as the original storytellers of this land and recognise their significant contribution to contemporary moving image. So today you're going to meet Senior Curator Bethan Lloyd-Johnson, who has worked with the Art and Design Collective Universal Everything to plan the exhibition. You're also going to meet Zoe Horzella, Senior Exhibitions Project Coordinator, who has worked closely with Bethan to make this exhibition the fun and accessible experience that it is. And today you're also super fortunate as we have Kathy Hendy-Ekers, the Curriculum Manager from the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority, who will sum up what you've heard and give you expert answers to any questions you have about VCE art making and exhibiting and how you can apply your learning from today. Then after the talk, you'll be visiting our Beings exhibition, and we're also taking you to a screen-based exhibition based on featuring an artwork called Theatre of War by Stanislava Pinchuk. Oh, yeah, our focus today is obviously on these three main units of learning. So this presentation will be available to you following this session. So I'm not going to linger too much on these details, on the general info about ACMI, but we are a screen culture museum that focuses on film, TV, video games and art. And with our location in Feds Square, we're part of Melbourne's renowned art precinct. And hands up, have you been to ACMI before? Oh, fantastic. So welcome back to those of you who know us, and those of you who haven't been here before, I'm hoping this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship and you'll be coming back often. And in fact, we can boast that we are the most visited screen culture museum in the world. And we're fortunate to be funded by the state government through Creative Victoria, and our education program is funded by the Education Department. Now, because we're a public body, we are accountable to the people of Victoria, so to you folks. So you can find out all about us on our website, including our vision, our mission, and our values. So my guess is that those of you who do know us have possibly visited the Story of the Moving Image, our permanent exhibition. Hands up if you've been to the Story of the Moving Image. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so it's an absolutely sensational exhibition, and it's actually a really tangible representation of ACMI's values. We also have a really rich program of temporary exhibitions, such as the Beings exhibition that you are going to be seeing today. And you can get a sense of the diversity of this program through some of our previous exhibitions that I've got up here. So we've got the sustainability theme from Marshmallow Laser Feast Works of Nature. We had a showcase of First Nations artists and filmmakers in How I See It. And Goddess was ACMI's celebration of women on screen, and it was curated by none other than Bethan Johnson, which makes this the perfect moment to hand over to our experts. So over to you, experts.
Hi, lovely to be with you guys here today. I'm just going to move this down. Susan's so much taller than me. So it takes a lot of people to build and make an exhibition. Today we're going to be taking you behind the scenes to learn more about how we develop and deliver exhibitions, working with an artist to select works, right through to thinking about the visitor journey and how we want the visitor to feel and think and act in the space, and also through to problem solving during kind of install. I'll be talking through the curatorial process, and then Zoe will be chatting through the exhibition design and production, and then we'll have some time for questions. So Beings is our brand new exhibition by International Art and Design Collective UE, Universal Everything. You'll hear me refer to them as UE as a bit of a shorthand. And it's a vibrant and really joyful exhibition, and it's been such a pleasure to work with them on developing and delivering this exhibition. It blends playful interactives with hypnotic visuals, and it features 13 artworks that are projected at cinematic scale that invite you to move and dance and play with a cast of curious characters. The artworks grow and they change in real time, responding to each visitor differently. And this is UE's largest international exhibition to date, and it includes the world premiere of 4 new artworks. So, who are UE? They are a collective of media artists and experienced designers and also future makers. They make and create life-affirming, future-positive artworks which invite you into a vibrant and playful world fueled by endless imagination and populated with captivating characters and these fantastical creatures. When I talk about UE, I love to include this work because I kind of like to think of them as these characters here that you see on screen. UE was founded in 2004 by creative director Matt Pike. And this was a time when computers and video software with better processing power and graphics technology allowed creatives to experiment with new forms of media. And connected by an independent spirit and a kind of do-it-yourself approach to harnessing new technology, UE created a new zeitgeist for digital-led projects that fused different disciplines such as animation, motion and computer graphics, audiovisual installations, and also interactivity. They were inspired by the frenetic energy of skateboarding and raves and fashion and music to create this hybrid practice that blurs the boundaries between art and design, and also commerce. They work with a lot of brands and agencies as well. UE began in Matt Pike's garden studio in Sheffield in England, but it has now grown into a global network of architects, engineers, designers, cinematographers, animators, musicians, and many, many more other creative disciplines. And they continue to move fluidly between galleries, concert stages, festivals, and also brand activations, but always with an audience-focused approach. UE have exhibited their distinctive works around the world, from Seoul to New York, and collaborated with the likes of MTV, Radiohead, Coldplay, and also Apple, as well as creative organisations and museums and institutions such as the Sydney Opera House, the V&A Museum in London, and also the Barbican. And here on screen you can see one of their works, Super Consumers, presented in 2 different locations. The first is on kind of a super-sized billboard on the side of a department store. This is a moving image work, but also you can see it in the gallery as well. So they kind of move seamlessly between these 2 different types of spaces. For over 20 years, UE have subverted CGI technology, physics simulations, and also real-time gaming graphics to produce seamless and sensory experiences that centre joy, curiosity, and also simplicity. But their exploration always begins with a single hand-drawn line, proving that creativity begins with an idea, not code or computers. First found in the sketchbooks of Matt Pike, UE's charming friends begin their lives as these quick and rough pencil sketches that hint at personality and also movement. For the first time, a selection of these concept sketches will be displayed along the final works at ACMI. So you have never included these works alongside the final artwork. So it's a really rare opportunity to see kind of behind their process. And this is one of, I suppose, the key ideas behind our exhibition and the way that ACMI likes to work. We want to show you the processes behind screen culture and give you a glimpse into that way of working and their creativity. Here you can see UE dreaming of their now iconic work, Transfiguration. The rough sketch outlines a figure morphing between organic textures, such as smoke and lava. And what I love about this sketch is you can really kind of sense that feeling of movement, even though it's a kind of a static image. So this is one of the key messages that we want to bring to life in the exhibition. And this is what that concept sketch became. Projected at over 5 meters here at ACMI, this colossal figure is accompanied by a really evocative soundscape. And we'll come back and talk about the importance of sound with moving image later on in the talk. UE use emerging technologies as their tools and canvas to create this idea of soulful technology. And that's a term that UE coined to articulate the experience beneath the abstraction and the high gloss aesthetic that feels alive and empathetic. And that's really at the kind of heart of UE's work. When we're thinking about the key themes of the exhibition and what we want to draw on, we think about how we can articulate the essence, I suppose, of what UE stand for. And so some of the key works that we look at is this sense of movement, play and choreography. So that is not only on screen, but also that idea of the participant, the interactivity of the artworks, and the fact that they always invite you to move and dance with it. Another key element is this idea of anthropomorphism and vibrant colour. These are really kind of key essence of the work of UE. So they're inspired by nature and human figures and emotions to create works that are friendly and kind of hyperreal beings. And so geometric forms are transformed into lovable characters by simply adding these kind of black dots. And UE asks us to see the humanity in the abstracted forms and shapes. The other kind of key essence of UE is that they use emerging technologies as their tools and canvases. So they like to challenge and test new ways of working. And scale is also an important factor of their practice. So the sheer size of the artwork that envelops you into their world, and that furthers that feeling of being immersed. Now at ACMI, we begin all projects with these questions. So who is our target audience and why now? And by establishing our target audience and what we want them to feel or what we want them to do in the gallery space, we're able to design the show with these visitors in mind. And this influences every aspect of the exhibition, from selecting artworks right through to their positions in the galleries, and also the aesthetic choices such as colour palette. So here is our kind of target figure. So that's our hope for visitation across the 4 months of the exhibition. And our visitor outcomes. So this invitation to play, that it's a social experience, and that we can inspire through showing that behind the scenes process, but that it's also accessible for a broad audience, but also kind of taps in and is accessible for a family audience. And ACMI undertakes audience research at the start of a project. And through this research, we identified that families are often concerned or thinking about screen time, and that they would benefit from a more analogue experience that was kind of a non-screen interactive that complemented the digital artworks. So we began designing a creative activity that drew inspiration from those works. We'll talk a bit more about the design of their activity at a later stage. Here is a quick snapshot of our timeline. So this exhibition had a kind of compressed timeline. And I'm going to chat to you today about this first section that we started off in October last year. So selecting the artworks, and then Zoe will pick up and talk about the design process and how we begin to approach that. So this is a couple. I wanted to start off by discussing a couple of the artworks that we have in the exhibition, and this is the oldest piece that we have in the show. It's called Presence, and it was made in 2013. It's a video work that is about a minute and a half long, and it's played on loop. It uses motion capture data from dancers, so they capture that data and kind of put it through the computer to look at different kind of skins. And at the time, this was a tech that was primarily used by Hollywood studios. So if you think about Gollum in Lord of the Rings, it's that technology that they were using and kind of repurposing. And I think what's really fascinating about this artwork is that Yui are testing the very limits of what we can read as a human form by reducing the figure to this single dancing line. And this is one of the rare occasions where they wanted the artwork to be projected at human height, so that you get that sense of feeling the human scale when you're viewing the work. And this also raised some questions around digital preservation. So it's one of their oldest works, and so we needed to think about what files type did they still have available? Could we project it at the scale that we wanted to? Was it going to hold up against some of their more contemporary and new works? So we're always thinking about how we can combine those historic works with contemporary, but making sure that they feel sympathetic. Now, this is the first interactive that you will meet when you go down into the gallery, and it's entitled Future You. You can become one of 47,000 different robot reflections, and you start off as a very primitive form, and your reflection adapts to your movements, and it becomes more complicated the more that you move and dance with it. And every interaction is unique. It's trained on the movements of real people, and Future You uses body tracking sensors to detect and interpret your movements. The data is processed through a video games engine, and it was built in Unity. So it assigns different material qualities and colors and textures to create a personalized character specifically for you. We then have Infinity, which is created live in the gallery. And so you think, what do you mean by that? Well, this is a work that uses a technique called procedural generation. And we normally see that in video games to create things like animated characters and digital landscapes and textures all in real time. And it's a really bold and colourful artwork with a frenetic energy as characters kind of run and hop and stumble, each with their own unique kind of wild, hairy texture. And Yui used motion capture technology and CGI to create a suite of character models. They then established a set of rules to determine how colour, texture, and shape could be combined together, before programming an algorithm to randomly select different combinations. And this generates infinite variations of the characters that you meet on screen. So this is running live in the gallery as we speak. So you really no two characters are the same. And UE see this as a collaboration between humans and computers. And what's really fun about this particular artwork is that not even UE know who's going to kind of arrive on screen. And during the install, we have the artworks running and testing them all the time. And it was really kind of fascinating to see the variety of characters come up. And we were kept being surprised. You kind of think you know what's going to come, and then it completely surprises you all over again. Now, this piece is a test shot from one of the artworks that is a world premiere called Migrations. And it places us amongst a mesmerizing procession of beautiful and surreal characters. And this test shot that UE sent to us, we kind of instantly knew, oh, this is going to be good. You got a feeling or a sense for what the artwork could be. And I suppose, the exhibition draws upon UE's 20-year history, but we also wanted it to be an opportunity for them to test and challenge their practice and to support them to create new works. And that felt really key. So you have to kind of build this relationship of trust with the artist, because you're working not knowing what they might create. So I think this was a test that we saw maybe November. So we were already kind of selecting the artworks. And as soon as we saw this, we thought, okay, we need to rethink perhaps its location and prominence in the gallery, because I think this is going to be kind of great. And whenever I see this test, I always think of myself as this kind of slow-moving blob in the centre. And this is what the artwork ended up being. So this is the final work that you see in the gallery. And it's projected over 10 metres. And so viewing this work is really a kind of sensory experience, and it's really hypnotic. The characters were created by adapting and animating motion capture data that tracks the movement and the styles of real-world animals, from elephants to ostriches and kangaroos to caterpillars. But UE created over 50 kaleidoscopic animals, mixing and matching those coats and furs to create this kind of surreal collection. And throughout their work, UE invites us to use our own imagination and craft our own narratives. These characters kind of play between the familiar and the fantastical. Whenever I watch this work, I kind of think, where are they going? What do they eat? Where are they traveling to? Who's the predator? So I think all of UE's works invite that kind of level of questioning, and they ask you to think about the narrative and use your imagination to do so. I'm going to hand over to Zoe.
So Beth has done a great job of talking about some of the beautiful works and beings. I'm going to talk you through some of the exhibition design process we went through to get there, and also the making of the show and the various challenges we met along the way. There's some interesting stories to tell here. So exhibition design is really important. As you can see, there's always a number of beautiful artworks, interesting, fascinating things that you want to put into an exhibition, but the design is what kind of makes everything fit together. The way artworks are presented in a gallery space influences the viewer's interpretation or experience of the work. Exhibitions are carefully designed to emphasize the narrative or story they're aiming to tell. The exhibition designer redesigns and modifies the physical aspects of the gallery space to enhance the audience experience of artworks. The physical and ambient design of the space creates a structure for a narrative to unfold, emphasizing the thematic placement of works. Design modifications can be aesthetic or structural. For a large exhibition in our Gallery 4 space, which is the space where Beings is currently, we engage an exhibition designer to work closely with the curator and exhibition coordinator to develop the show. We then have our ACMI design team who developed the exhibition identity. You might have noticed when you came into the building, there were a lot of little characters dotted around the place and some really, really playful beings around that are essentially an extension of what you'll see in the exhibition. Really fun. We've enjoyed it, even seeing it every day. So there are a number of things we consider when moving into exhibition design. There are themes, the intention of the artists and the artworks. They're very big aspects of that. We then consider the interpretation, how we're going to tell everyone about the works and the narrative that we'd like to explain to everyone. The gallery space, sightlines, color, scale, multimedia, which includes sound and sound bleed, which Bethan mentioned are really key, particularly in relation to moving image works. Lighting, conservation, audience journey, accessibility, budget, sustainability, and staffing are just a few of them. So you might wonder what the difference is between a digital and object-based show. So with digital, AV is the main consideration. I guess the focus shifts a little bit depending on the type of show it is. So when it's a digital show, the fit out is mostly centered about the presentation of those digital works. So there's lots of screens, projectors, and more AV than there would be in an object-based show. With objects, it then triggers conservation considerations, so it kind of changes the way the show is put together and also how it's installed. Objects have conservation requirements around temperature, light, and other things that we need to consider. They need to be installed in a clean space. So part of the reason why we were able to deliver Beings in a bit of a compressed timeline was because it was mainly digital. If we had had an object-based show, that would have probably added another couple of weeks to our install time because the gallery needs to be totally clean for that to happen. And there are things you always need in an exhibition. So there's color palette, seating, and lighting, just to name a few. So these are very important aspects of exhibition design. So over here, I've plotted out the key stages in the design process, which starts with the design brief. There's a lot of curatorial work that happens before this point, and I guess all that work feeds into the design brief to tell the exhibition designer or exhibition design team what the exhibition is, who is it for, what the designer needs to consider, any limitations, any considerations about the space, and any aspirations we have for the exhibition and how we'd love it to look. That all goes into the design brief. Once we've appointed a designer, we then move into concept design. So the main question here is how will we spatially integrate a list of works and their relationship to each other? And what are the big changes we're making to the space? If we're changing the structure of the exhibition in any way, this is a good time to plan that. Even just as a conceptual, we are going to probably have a room over here type of thing. The what, and it's essentially the what and the where. So then we move into develop design, which is a very big stage. We tease out what was proposed at concept and move into the how. We start to understand materiality, what sort of fabrics we're going to use, if we're going to, use any particular flooring, what color will the walls be, that sort of thing. And it's also a dance between delivering the curatorial vision and staying on budget and on time. And so Bethan and I have done this kind of seven-month-long dance between each other. So once that phase is a quite long phase. From my perspective, I tend to create the timelines for these. I like to devote the most time to this detailed design phase so we can get as much as we need teased out at that point. And we're working closely with our architect at that point too. So basically, our architect makes sure that everything we're dreaming up kind of makes sense in a kind of built form world. So we'll ask all the pointed questions around, will this fit, for example, or maybe it won't, maybe you should move it over here type of thing. So once we're happy with detailed design, we then move into the construction drawings phase. So our architect translates our designs into construction drawings, and that goes out, generally will go out to a builder. In the case of beings, we reused an existing footprint, which I'll talk to a bit more in a second. So we didn't actually have a build, so we didn't appoint a builder. So we moved straight into painting and install after that, and obviously deinstalling the previous show as well. We then move into fabrication, which is when we get everything built, new plinths, anything, showcases if there are objects. In this case, we had to get, for example, housings built for the sensors, and we also built activity tables, which you'll see in a little bit as well. Then we move into in-gallery demolition and construction. And we open to the public. I'll talk to those phases a little bit more throughout my slides. So this is what Gallery 4 looks like empty. It's a big black box. It used to be an old train platform, so if you can kind of imagine it alongside the Flinders Street train lines, it kind of makes a lot of sense. So we start with a big empty shell generally and build the exhibition in a space. But it's quite challenging because it's a long and narrow space. So our design will always have to funnel people from the stairs and their back up and around the exit via the escalator somehow. So that's something we consider in our design. And we also want to make each exhibition look and feel different, so visitors feel like they're moving through a different space each time. So this is an example. So I've got the floor plan at the top of empty Gallery 4, so that shows you the big black box I just described. And in this case, for sustainability reasons, we've reused the build from what was Goddess. So you can see Goddess's build in the second floor plan, which shows the curved wall and the round room, and a number of things that you'll then see repeated in the floor plan after it. Below is Marshmallow Laser Feast, which reused that floor plan and looked totally different. Used quite a lot of curtains to change the kind of journey through the space there, which you can see as those like cloudy kind of lines there. And this is the floor plan for beings. So again, you'll recognize that curved wall I pointed out and the round room towards the end. We kept, all the build remained the same, but all of the AV was changed and tweaked, and we moved a massive screen from one end to the other, which I'll talk to a bit. And at the end there, you can see the 3 activity tables, which I'll also talk to. This gives you an example of the look and feel of the difference between the 3 shows, which are in the same, so it's the same walls, but all look and feel totally different to each other. In the top second 2 photos, you can see the shiny floor looking totally different with different projections in the space. Over to you.
So the way that artworks are presented in the gallery really influence the viewer's interpretation or also their experience of the work. And as Zoe mentioned, exhibitions are carefully designed to emphasize these different narratives or the story that they're aiming to tell. For beings, although we were drawing on Yui's 20-year history, we knew we wanted to create a show where older works were in dialogue with newer works. And an integral part of that exhibition design is thinking about how people move through the space as well, how we want them to act and feel. And when devising the visitor journey, we often talk about pacing or dwell time. So that's how people kind of stop and stay in different sections of the gallery, but also how we want them to act perhaps in the different sections. So is this an area with interactives, which is kind of high energy, or are we wanting them to slow down and watch for longer? So the kind of selection of artworks and that devising the narrative and working with Zoe and the designer goes hand in hand, because you're kind of responding to the limitations of the space, but also thinking about the the tech that we need and all of those kind of design considerations that Zoe outlined. So when we were thinking about placing the artworks, we were thinking about what I rather cornerly call the vibe. So we wanted to start with something that was really high energy. The artworks in this first section that we nicknamed the playground are really frenetic, and they help set the tone for the exhibition, which is inviting you to play and be silly and maybe move differently to what you might expect normally in a gallery. It also establishes this tone that curiosity will be rewarded because it isn't a passive experience. But then we wanted to create these kind of pockets of quieter experiences that encourage you to pause and reflect. And these include artworks that benefit you kind of watching for longer. So if we think about migrations, that kind of parade of animals, that's in the sit and watch area, because we want people to stop and kind of have the space and time to really watch for longer and kind of think about some of those questions that Yui's proposing, and have those moments kind of for thoughtful reflection. As we move through the gallery, we also think about how we might pair artworks. So again, thinking how we might pair the historic with contemporary. So we can look at how Yui has approached similar themes around choreography over the span of their career. And then towards the end of the gallery, we've got a section of interactives that are inspired by nature. And again, these feel like a much slower, kind of calmer experience. So again, thinking about that dwell time and how we want people to move through the space. And then the final moment is our hands-on creative activity. So this was the kind of create your own being analog experience that we devised in response to the visitor research that we undertook, that idea of needing an experience that perhaps was a bit more analog, that could complement the digital artworks. And I wanted to show you here an example of how the design can have a huge impact on your experience of the artwork, and how it can further and enhance the narrative of the work. So we see on display in the first image the artwork Into the Sun, and this is on how it was exhibited in London when it premiered there. And on the far image you see it at ACMI. So you can see that through the design and the materials that we've used, we're wanting to enhance the artwork and that feeling that we want it to create. So we had mirrored sides and a roof as well, so that landscape of Into the Sun feels expansive. But we also created a vinyl floor that was kind of a dappled orangey colours that I suppose helped evoke that sense of kind of sand dunes or kind of heat. And it's funny how just in adding these design touches, it really brings a warmth to the experience of this particular interactive.
So in design, everything looks good on paper for the most part. It all looks really good, but we have to figure out if it's actually going to work. And so we do a lot of testing, and that often happens through the developed design phase I described earlier. You can see in this photo here a number of samples, which I'll talk through in a bit more detail, but linking to Bethan's slide just before around Into the Sun and that desert landscape, you can see 4 test prints in the bottom left showing the different, we were trying to pick the different textures, how grainy did we actually want the floor to look. And it's really funny when you look at a printout on an A3 sheet versus, an actual vinyl print. So we go through stages, we'll print out something like that to start with, and if it kind of looks and feels right, we'll then ask our vinyl printer to print an actual real-life sample, which we'll then test in the space, in exhibition lighting as well. So we test all sorts of things. As you can see here, there's color, we do color matching, testing line thickness in the top. In the top right, there's color swatches, and the bottom, all the lovely fabrics you'll see in the space that are covering our playful seating. So as I mentioned earlier, every exhibition needs a color palette, and this is the color palette we settled on for Beings. Some beautiful colors in there. And we actually had a paint partnership with Hames for this exhibition, and they've given us the fun job of naming the paint colors, which we're very much looking forward to. So something I've always wanted to do. Lighting is really important in an exhibition. It essentially changes everything, and everything looks totally different on the exhibition lighting. So we did quite a lot of lighting tests to see whether we had a lot of black walls, to see if lighting would be effective on those walls, because lighting often doesn't show up that well in black, but we managed to find some colors that really worked. And you can see in the middle there, John, our lighting designer, testing the color swatches, the paint swatches you just saw in the earlier slide, under lighting, and they totally changed color. We also test fabric. We start off with fabric samples a lot of the time for seating, and then depending on the type of seating, we'll often make a prototype. In the case of the 2 ottomans you can see here, which were made for the activity tables, one of them was covered in fur and the other one was covered in neoprene, and these were both materials that aren't typically used for upholstery. So we thought it would be good to make prototypes of them just to see how they actually worked on the seats before going ahead and making all 20 of them. And they came out really nice. Accessibility is also something we consider in design. So alongside seating aesthetics, we consider accessibility needs. We include seats with backs and armrests, as well as dedicated wheelchair zones. We also aim for our designs to be as universal as possible. The activity is a good example of this. The table height and reach is accessible, and each table has an accessible option. There's one permanent wheelchair spot at one table, and the option of an accessible seat at each of the other 2 tables. And you can see in the slide here, it shows all the dimensions that we worked through to make sure that it all worked. And at the bottom is the top of the activity table, which is a light box, and the acrylic shapes on top, which invite you to create your own being. And you can see on the right-hand side, the tables installed with the ottomans I just showed you as well, the furry and neoprene ones. And Friends, which Bethan spoke to at the end, which is a really playful work. So in the case of this exhibition, where we had a number of interactives, we also had to do quite a lot of interactive testing. And this started off just, as you can see on the left, on a computer in the AV office. We had a sensor set up, which you can see on the right, and it gave us the opportunity to try out the interactives, see how they responded to us and to movements, and to get to know them. At the time, Bethan and Matt were writing the interpretation, so this sort of experience of the interactives was really important to letting our visitors know what to do. So we had feedbacks and tips from the team at UE that they had given us based on their previous experience with them. We had info about the interactives, so tech requirements, number of players, optimal sensor distance to get us started. And we tested them as much as possible before install to ensure everything was working well. And as I mentioned, just to see how they responded to us and how they actually worked. But I should note that we couldn't test them spatially until we were during install. So we had to be quite ready to test it in the space and also respond to anything new we hadn't fully appreciated before. UE had strongly recommended guiding visitors to a visible place to stand to engage with the interactives. So we wanted visitors to know what to do, but to also feel free to explore on their own. And so we decided to create a stand here, what we call the stand here decal, which doesn't say stand here on it, but it's essentially an invitation to play with the interactive, and it gives you a starting point. I'll come back to that.
We're doing a tag team. So as Zoe mentioned, we start thinking about the interpretation. So that can be a written interpretation. And ACMI's, I suppose, written voice is informal. So we like to write for an audience, or a kind of imagined audience, of a 7+ literacy. So our labels are really accessible to a wide audience. And we want to invite people in with vivid detail rather than kind of generalizations or also jargon. And for this show specifically, we knew we needed to kind of demystify the tech that was being used, and it is really kind of complex tech. So we did a lot of work about thinking about how we could break down and describe what was going on without kind of slipping into these kind of tech jargon. So we've decided to focus on a key element of the process in each artwork. And we also created these large format wall texts. So you can see here in the gallery that you've kind of got a hierarchy of label text. We say label text. So the larger text is in cut vinyl, and that is earmarked for the interactives. So they are kind of a call to action. It signifies that it's interactive, but also gives you a prompt to give you an idea of what to do. So in the first one we see here, raise your arms and reach for the sun, for into the sun. So it's, we don't want to be too descriptive, but it wants to be kind of evocative of what you need to be doing. But we also created a series of the smaller text, which looks, I suppose, more at the conceptual themes of that artwork, but also an insight into how it was made and some of the processes too. Alongside the printed cut vinyl that we have on the surrounding walls, we also developed a series of translation booklets available in 3 languages. So as I mentioned, one of the kind of big ideas of this exhibition is bringing that sense of process to life. And interpretation isn't just about the written word. So we know that not everybody reads our labels. So we want to think about how we could bring that big idea to life. And as I mentioned, this is the first time that UE have displayed their concept sketches alongside the final artworks. So dotted throughout the gallery and displayed on light boxes are the sketches that help bring that process to the fore and show you the kind of their starting point. So that idea of the sketch, the production. So this middle section is footage from motion capture data, and then the final artwork at the end. A number of these concept drawings are also reproduced as large-scale decals on the surrounding walls. So here you can see the first kind of concept sketch for the interactive that I discussed before, Future You. And then in the final image, you can see it just on the wall there, and somebody kind of playing with that interactive at the front. And they are printed in vinyl as well, cut vinyl. Part of our interpretation strategy was also to create a short documentary style film, which includes exclusive interviews with a number of the members of the collective that goes behind their creative process as they discuss things like the importance of playfulness and probing the edges of technology, but also their approach to amplifying emotions. And this film includes really amazing behind-the-scenes footage where you can see how the artworks are created, from translating motion capture data, as we see here, to things like testing different textures and also kind of answering critical questions like how hairy is too hairy. And this film is available to watch online as well, so you can sit down and watch it in the gallery, in that circular gallery space that Zoe noted that we had kept from the Goddess floor print, but you can also watch it online, and it's about 10 minutes. Thank you.
So as I was mentioning before, we had to put together instructions for the interactives, and we decided on a floor decal to invite people to know where to start from when engaging with the interactive. So as you can see here, the symbiosis on one side and there's kinfolk on the other. And the decals are installed there. That's the design. And you can see the number of players. You know, there's 4 for both Into the Sun and for kinfolk. And there's 2 for symbiosis, and it's actually 1 player only for Future You, but there's 2 opportunities to engage with that interactive. It's a big double-sided screen, which I'll talk to a bit more in a moment. And here you can see them in place, where we're trying to figure out, would they look okay? This is before we had, you know, got the gallery and were installing. So this was all the pre-work we did in the design. And I'll now tell you about the double-sided screen. So during install, we reused a big 4800 high double-sided screen, which was originally used for Marshmallow Laser Feast on the left. As you can see here with a beautiful projection of a tree. And that had mirror content on either side. So there was this beautiful projection of this tree on either side of the screen. What we thought would be the challenge here is the size of the screen and moving it across the gallery. And it certainly was. We had to get it from one end of the gallery all the way around that kind of curved wall I described and get it to the very first room. So basically crossed all the way. So we had to take it apart. The soft screen surface had to be removed and the internal tech deinstalled before the frame could be lowered and dismantled. The various parts were then moved across the gallery, and we then got riggers in to help us raise the screen into its new position. So that process took about 3 days during install, and that was when we thought the hard part was over. After the screen was fully set up, we had to install the tech inside it, speakers, etc., and then started testing the interactive. But we quickly realized that as I mentioned, it's a double-sided screen, that you could see the projection on the other screen from the other side. So it was essentially reflecting through, the light was passing through the screen. And this was quite a surprise to us. We couldn't quite work out why this had happened, but once we realized that the content Marshmallow Laser Feast had on it was mirror content, so you wouldn't have been able to really see any differences between the two because it was exactly the same and also much darker. And as you can see on the right-hand side, future you is a bit more, you've got your robotic version of you in front of you, and the screen is quite clear all around it. So that was where all the shadowing showed up. And so we were in the middle of install, so we had limited options with what we could do. So we consulted with the fabricators of the screen and decided the best solution we had given our time constraints were to attempt to block the light from passing from one side to the other. We didn't really have time to get a new screen made or anything like that in the time. So what we did was we sourced and purchased blackout fabric. We had to buy, like, as I mentioned, it's almost 5 meters high. So we got 5 meter lengths of this fabric and then had to figure out how to hang it. We used a piece of ACMI aluminium extrusion as like a curtain rail, essentially, but we also had to sew the fabric, and we were lucky enough to have a seamstress on our install team on the day we needed this to happen. So it all worked out pretty well. But a lot of these things happen because you can't actually, sometimes you just can't try things until you're in the space itself, and then you've got limited time to fix things. So you have to be ready to respond and have a lot of different scenarios up our sleeve. And every now and then something takes you totally by surprise, like something like this. But we got through it, and it looks amazing. I also wanted to quickly mention how key sound design is in an exhibition. So we were lucky enough to work with Simon Pike, UE's sound designer, to tailor the landscape for the space and proximity of artworks to each other. You often have the risk of sound bleed between artworks that have quite prominent soundscapes, I guess, and they tend to impact each other. So we did a lot of work. Sound bleed is quite a real thing in Gallery 4 because of none of the walls are full height. So the sound just travels over those walls. So Simon did an amazing job with the soundscape. The sound for many of the works was remixed to work better in the space. You can see him in his studio in Brighton there, and this is where he was when we spoke to him on Zoom. Some works even had their tempos matched to sound better together, which really, really worked well. There are a couple of works that have quite big soundscapes, and they're right next to each other, and you wouldn't notice. It's quite amazing. And in some cases where, soundscapes didn't quite fit together, he'd create a zone soundscape for in-between works to kind of help weave the different audio together. I just wanted to mention, so this is my last slide here, the work essentially continues after opening. So now we've opened, we're maintaining the exhibition, learning what we can fix and do better and what the audience needs. And we'll keep going with that. We're always improving, watching our visitors and seeing how they respond to the space. And so the exhibition will keep getting better throughout its time being shown. Thank you all so much.